Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. And of course, last night the president gave his State of the Union address, and mixed reactions, to say the least, today around the country. But I am delighted and honored to have with us today a good friend, John Gizzi. And John and I go way back when I was in the RNC, and this guy is a walking political encyclopedia and a fun guy and a good brother. He is currently the chief political columnist for Newsmax magazine, and he is also the White House correspondent. So a lot of times when you see the White House news conferences, you'll see John sitting right there in the front row. So, hi, John. How you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Great to be here, Perry. Thank you for that warm introduction.
Yeah, good to see you. Well,
the only thing a gentleman can do now is die.
Well, listen, John, the president says, I want to get along, but I have my veto pen. You know, give me a break. What's going on here?
I think the State of the Union message last night was a case of drawing the line in the proverbial sand, Perry. The president, who many thought would govern from the center when he took office, has clearly moved to the left. And I think the most telling remark was that many felt with the previews of the speech on everything from free community college education to raising the capital gains tax from 15% to 28%, he was going to basically move over to the Elizabeth Warren wing of the party. Well, sure enough, no sooner had the president finished his remarks last night than progressives.org, a decidedly left-of-center website, had a headline saying, the president takes cue from Warren, and it's a good thing. He is facing a decidedly center-right or even right-of-center Congress, the House and Senate in Republican hands, and he is moving in the other direction from the 2014 elections and from part of his own party that had hoped he would govern from the middle. I might add, Congressman Tom McClintock of California reminded me that President Bill Clinton, faced with a similar defeat in 1994 that Barack Obama suffered in 2014, embraced the Republicans, worked with them, and even when they tried to impeach him, he was able to turn in 4 budget surpluses in 4 years, lowered the capital gains tax rate to its current level, and began to attack entitlements, something Ronald Reagan didn't even do. It's very different. Essentially, any legacy Bill Clinton had is being squandered by Barack Obama.
Wow. All right. So bottom line is we're in a gridlock for 2 years. The Congress isn't going to give him what he wants, and vice versa. It's just not going to happen. So we're somewhat in a standstill. So it looks like more executive orders.
Well, he's going to try that. And I talked this morning to Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, who said it's a good thing that Congress will try to overturn the executive orders on immigration that the president issued. On the other hand, he said it's also a better idea if they focused on some positive policies that would show an alternative to the president. For example, a constructive policy dealing with immigration. Not a comprehensive package. Senator Rubio moved away from that, but a step-by-step package. The same will be true if, in the King versus Burwell case, the Supreme Court strikes down the lion's share of Obamacare because of the inequity in the subsidies that are coming out. If that's the case, Republicans had better have an alternative plan, because essentially the high court will be calling their hand. Do you have something else?
Wow. All right, I want to take advantage of the short time I have you. All right, John Boehner, can he get anything done? I mean, I know he's already strong-armed the conservatives coming in. What do you see ultimately happening in the House?
Okay, I had a long talk on Friday, Perry, with Dan Webster, who was the congressman who received the most votes against Speaker Boehner of the 25 votes cast against him on the Republican side of the aisle. Mr. Webster himself, a former Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives, felt no malice from the reelected Mr. Boehner. He bears him no ill will. All he suggested was that the Speaker and the Republican leadership make greater use of individual members, bring them to the helm, Let them be focused on it and let their agendas be focused on it, and Republicans could do quite well. If Boehner follows the advice of Webster, if he knows his Webster, I think he may well be successful in the coming 2 years.
All right, because some were saying that was probably the best thing to happen in spite of what they would see as a dismal leadership in light of 2016. It wouldn't muddy the water to have that fight go public.
No, because at least one would get an idea of what Republicans would do in terms of governance. And again, going back to what Congressman Webster recalled to me, when he became Florida's first Republican Speaker of the House since Reconstruction, his gavel later assumed by one Marco Rubio, Mr. Webster was facing a Democratic governor, Lawton Chiles. Nonetheless, the Republican lawmakers were able to work with him, and they were also able to demonstrate they knew governance. And that paved the way for the election of Governor Jeb Bush in 1998.
Interesting. All right, John, let's jump over to 2016. I realize it's early, but we're already seeing the polling, and we're already seeing the struggling going on between the Romneys and what would be the Christies and the Jeb Bush, seeing a somewhat moderate, and then the more conservative side of the party. Do you think we're going to see a real crowded primary for the Republicans?
Absolutely, and it's very healthy. With all due respect to my colleague George Will, I don't think one has to go back to 1856 to see such a talented and crowded field. I think certainly there was one in 1980. When you think about it, Ronald Reagan, the elder George Bush, Howard Baker, Governor John Connally, Bob Dole, the late Congressman Phil Crane. It was quite an impressive field when one recalls that, and I think this field will be just as impressive. One other thing, that when I talked to Senator Rubio this morning, he pointed out to me that he will make a decision on just how best he can serve his country. He will not try to run for both offices at the same time. He will either run for president or the Senate, and that is it. And it all depends on how well he feels he can serve. This would have nothing to do with his friend and fellow Floridian Governor Bush's own plans. In fact, he said Bush would make a very strong candidate. Let me interject something, though. You heard it here first, Perry, on your program. I don't think in the end Mitt Romney will run. 50-50 on Rubio, but I will say keep your eye on someone who gets standing ovations whenever he speaks to grassroots Republicans, someone who took some hard stands, has big ideas, and always has a sunny outlook. Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. All right, let's flip over to the Democratic side. What are the pluses? What are the pluses and the minuses of Hillary running unopposed or opposed?
Well, look at it this way. I recall how 2 years before the '08 elections, John McCain appeared to have the nomination wrapped up for 2008, and many Republicans signed on with the senator from Arizona because he had run in 2000 and done very well. 8 years is a long time. Former Secretary of State James Baker used to say overnight is an eternity in politics. Well, remember, just as McCain was something fresh and exciting in 2000, by 2008, many people said he's a good man, but we've heard that narrative before. So it is with Secretary Clinton, and I think in being resigned to the inevitability of a Clinton nomination, many Democrats also realize they have someone whom they're very familiar with who will not be tested in this race and is 8 years older than she was when she ran last time.
So does she become the McCain and the Dole of the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I believe that. I believe her time has passed, and also the ideas that she talks about. Very much like Barack Obama, she has moved to the left of the party, very possibly because she's aware of the fervent enthusiasm for Elizabeth Warren. And people are going to point out that she may not exactly be her husband, who always said he was a different kind of Democrat and governed from the middle, I might add.
All right.
I've got a funny feeling with Hillary Clinton. It is not inevitable.
Yeah. You know, John, last night's speech was very interesting because the president made a lot of one-liners that just weren't true. And the deficit's down and all of those things. But on the other hand, it appears to me that, have you seen any ratings? How many people watched it last night? Was it an all-time low?
I haven't seen any ratings yet. I know that the day he made the speech, the Gallup poll, one of the oldest and most respected of polls in the United States, said he had record low approval ratings. Mm-hmm. Essentially, he's throwing dice at this point and shooting craps with destiny because he's aware of a legacy. He's aware there's another presidential election, which is truly up in the air. So again, not sure exactly what direction he's going to go, but one sees what he's trying to do, and that's move to the left in his party.
I cannot believe, at least I have a hard time trying to digest, that he didn't spend more time. In fact, he hardly spent any time talking about the threat of terrorism, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and such. It just seemed to pass right on by, and yet it's very much on American minds.
It certainly is. He did mention the tragedy in Paris last week, what's happened in a school in Pakistan. And again, one is seeing just that very day the pro-United States government in Yemen being threatened by terrorists at this point, and one facing the specter of another Syria occurring and perhaps a second ISIS state in Yemen.
Wow. John, you're a delight. Love you, brother. And how do people get a hold of and subscribe to what you do?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. Just go to newsmax.com, or I'll tell you what, go to John Gizzi on Politics. It will take you directly to my column, and you can sign up to get my columns right there on Newsmax. Please do. Tell them Perry sent you.
Okay, buddy. Nice to see you. Best to you. And let's stay connected, okay?
You bet, my friend. And I love this Skype now that I learned how to do it.
I love your hat. All right, best to you. Talk to you soon. All right, there he is, John Gizzi from Newsmax, and subscribe and get it, and then get his columns as well. He's terrific. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Welcome back, and always a delight to have in the studio with us today Robin Fuller. She is the Executive Director of the Grants Pass Pregnancy Care Center, and just a delight to have her around. Coming up tomorrow, the 42nd anniversary of Roe versus Wade. I said earlier, Robin, I look forward to the day where we don't come together on January 22nd to commemorate that decision, but we come together to celebrate that it's been overturned.
Wouldn't that be fantastic?
You know.
Wow.
And let's just keep praying and believing for that, you know.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all you do, but you have a need. Let's talk about it. You need a couple of nurses.
Well, right now, yeah, we are really looking for some volunteer nurses to come work with us one day a week and do pregnancy testing and possibly eventually learn ultrasound along with us. So we're looking for those nurses who can volunteer and give one day a week.
In Grants Pass. So what do they do?
Absolutely.
Where do they call?
They call 479-6264.
Right.
Call me, find me on Facebook. I'll absolutely talk to anyone.
All right. So you nurses that are driving this morning, you just came under conviction and the Lord's tapping you on the shoulder. Give Robin a call and volunteer over there and be a part of a great organization and save babies. All right. Hey, our new legislation, our legislature is in session, and Oregon went more blue while the country went more red. Are you worried for our causes?
Well, we have battled as pregnancy centers in Oregon 3 different times, 2007, 11, and 13, legislation targeting our centers. And it's the same legislation and the same accusations that have been around for 25 years that I've been involved in pregnancy center work. So, and we know, we've already seen in writing that it's coming again against pregnancy centers. There's a petition that has been circulating off and on about pregnancy centers for the last couple years. They have sent, when I say they, it's Planned Parenthood as a large organization, and NARAL, or Pro-Choice America, NARAL. And they send in fake clients to try to gather information, anything they can get to gather accusations against us. And the accusations are lies. They say that we receive huge amounts of government funding, that our advertising is misleading, that we're trying to lure women in with fake deceptive practices, so then we completely prevent her from choosing abortion, which is so not true. Our centers and our organizations are there really based on love, and we believe that women are so smart that if we give them all the information, that we don't have to try to talk them into choosing life. Right. Many of them will do that.
You know, everybody, I never forget, I was running for Congress. I was in some forum and loaded with rooms and candidates and the media and everything else. I think it was in Baker City. Also, I was way over there somewhere. And this issue came up, and they said, okay, Atkinson, where are you on the abortion issue? And I said, I'm pro-choice. I thought you could have heard a pin drop in the room and people fall out of the chair. So they knew I wasn't. And I said, every time there is informed choice, women make the right decision.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that's how I explained it. But it did shake things up for a few moments. But that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, it is. And you know, I will be the first one to admit that most of the people working even in the abortion industry are good people.
Yeah.
They really believe they're doing something good. It's more the corporate politics, the corporate Planned Parenthood, and the corporate NARAL who have the agenda of shutting our doors. And the reality is, even in the state of Oregon, there are 42 pregnancy center locations, and we help over 40,000 women every year with, you know, over $1 million worth of free services. We're helping women be great parents. We're helping youth choose abstinence. We're helping women right in the midst of that crisis with information they really need. And the worst thing that can happen out of the information we give is a baby's born.
That's the worst thing that can happen.
You know, and so a new life is always a reason to celebrate.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to work with our legislators to let them know who we are, what we do, trying to get the truth to them. Because it's interesting that even Planned Parenthood and NARAL, they still call us crisis pregnancy centers. We haven't called ourselves that for more than 15 years. You know, we are pregnancy centers, we are pregnancy help clinics, we are pregnancy medical centers, we are, so it's interesting that you know, they're still back in old times and don't really know who we are and what we're doing.
The battle continues, but some of the numbers are turning.
Yes.
Abortions are down.
The numbers in Oregon are down a lot, but I also kind of suspect, you know, we now have Plan B, emergency contraception. How does that play into those numbers? Women are still choosing abortion, and they're still doing it in pretty desperate situations. It's not just that young teenager choosing, but it's women in really hard situations. And you know, there are just times when you look at what's going on with their lives, and it's, yeah, if they choose life, it's going to be really hard, a hard road for them.
All right, again, I just want to say, if you are a nurse around the Grants Pass area and you have some extra time, you can volunteer. They need your help there at the Grants Pass Pregnancy Center. So what you do is get a hold of Robin, and she'll give you all the details, but maybe you can volunteer a couple of hours or maybe a day a week or whatever.
Yeah, and they need to have their current RN license for the state of Oregon. And a lot of times it's a great way. In the past, we've had nurses who maybe are at-home moms. They want to keep their nursing hours up. It's been a great way for them to keep their hours and stay current.
Have you been able to sniff out if there are any hidden agendas with this legislature? It's something that could pop up besides going after pregnancy centers. But I mean, is there anything on the life issue that you're concerned about?
Well, you know, we have people looking all the time. The last round of legislation, they didn't even use the word pregnancy center in the bill. But the way the bill was worded, it would target only pregnancy centers.
Wow.
So they're very, very deceptive in what they're doing. So, you know, we're up there in Salem, and we're trying to just be as personal as we can. God has really come through for us each time. And what has happened is I had a board member years ago when I was the director of a center in Sacramento, and I remember when I was introduced to the very first legislation down there that could have shut our doors, and this board member said, you know what, you don't run, you don't hide, you just make yourself better. So we're trying in Oregon to really be united, and all of our centers communicating and working with each other, and it's making all of us better, so it's a good thing.
You have one of the most active pregnancy care centers around. How busy were you last year?
We served through all of our programs probably about 3,500 people.
Wow.
Our abstinence program reached over 2,000 students. And then we had the silver ring thing on top of that, where we had probably 750 students and 250 parents. And then we have our medical clinic that, you know, serves, and then we have our abortion recovery program, and we're just pretty much rocking and rolling over there, and it's pretty awesome.
It is. The message is getting out to young people. I'm seeing some encouraging signs and numbers. You must feel pretty good about that, especially with the silver ring thing.
Well, you know, I think what we really see is our abstinence programs are really interactive with the kids. It's not somebody just standing up there talking. The one that we have, our EPIC program in the classroom, we're talking with the kids and we're trying to get them to own it. This is your life. Who do you want to be? Kind of like that Switchfoot song. But really, who do you want to be? What are your goals? If you don't have goals, maybe you should think about it. How do you think you're going to get there? And the kids are really receptive to that. And we know that a one-time talk or even a week-long talk won't necessarily change their mind, but seeds are planted. And they may remember that. And it's never too late to choose abstinence is one of our messages. So even if they do engage in sexual activity, they can always choose abstinence and come back to that.
Well, tomorrow's a big day, 42nd anniversary of Roe versus Wade, and I heard 54, 58, what is it, million? What is it, 58 million?
I think so.
I think it's 58 million babies have been lost, didn't get a chance to live through abortion. It's unbelievable. And even though the numbers are turning in the right direction, we got to completely stop this.
Well, and the thing that's crazy is Oregon is the only state in the nation that has absolutely zero restrictions on abortion. We're the only state. And so even when it comes to whether it's pregnancy centers helping to defend us, whatever it is, I heard David Crow yesterday talking, and we have this apathy going on. And it's really going to take people. If this bill, once we finally find it, or it's discoverable, or it comes out, a bill against pregnancy centers, which we've been told is coming, you know, we're going to need people to mobilize. And not just for us, but there will most likely be other bills with the current makeup of our legislature. We need,
and that is scary.
We need people out there. We need you.
Yeah, it's scary because first of all, Oregon went more blue. Secondly, we were unable to get the 125,000 signatures, which is, to me, is just, it's just inexcusable. And those are figures that are on the table that makes me worried, because if this bill does service, do we have the manpower? More importantly, do we have the conviction behind the manpower to stop it? You know.
Right. Well, we're hoping to talk to even those who are for abortion and let them know what we're doing. The lies against us they're just not true.
Yeah.
And to help them see all the good that we're doing in our communities. And we don't receive government funding, which is one of the biggest things that is set against us. So few centers nationwide have ever gotten government funds, and those who have, it's been for abstinence education years ago.
Yeah, wow. Well, thank you, sweetie, for what you do and the hard work, and your team. You guys are wonderful over there. And by the way, again, I just really hope if you're a nurse in and around the Grants Pass area, and you have some hours in your week that you can volunteer. Maybe you got a day. Maybe you're on a short work week. You can volunteer a day. Whatever the combinations are, get a hold of Robin there at the Pregnancy Center, 479-6264. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, 479-6264. And you need at least 2.
Yes.
And you got to be a current RN.
Yes.
And you possibly will be trained on the ultrasound?
Yeah.
Wow, cool.
Possibly.
Then what do you do? Get certified for that? Is that what happened?
Yeah, they have to do a certain number of ultrasounds under a registered diagnostic medical sonographer and receive lots of training.
Yeah.
So it's not a simple thing, but we sure appreciate you and what you guys do for us.
We're behind you. And anyway, I also want to remind you, tomorrow night, at 7 o'clock, Jackson County Right to Life has changed their time and venue. This year's celebration and commemoration has been moved indoors and to the evening. They'll be using the facility of the First Baptist Church in Medford, and it'll be at 7 o'clock. So entirely different venue for them this year, going from that cold courthouse step
absolutely
inside. So we'll see. Anyway, thank you.
And just always a reminder too that we've got the pregnancy center here in Medford as well. So
right here,
help
here
them out
with Cindy. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Welcome back, and coming up in just a moment, we're going to have Toby Harnden with us. He is the author of Dead Men Rising, an epic story of war and heroism in Afghanistan. So we'll be talking to him about his book coming up in just a few moments. I wanted to just kind of zero in on, again, reminding you about tomorrow night and how important this is. I really don't know how to convey adequately or effectively my passion for you to be there tomorrow night. We need the support of each other on this issue of saving babies. And so tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, First Baptist Church will be the commemoration of the 42nd anniversary of the decision of Roe versus Wade in Jackson County, and it'll be held at the First Baptist Church. So come on out, would you? Come on out and be there. It's indoors, it's in the evening, after work, warm, and should be okay. All right, let's go to our special guest today, Toby Harnden, who's with us today. And he's a dual British and American citizen. That means he's somewhat happy. Hi, Toby, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. I'm doubly happy. Doubly happy.
Okay. We're doing a little kind of a mixed version here of Skype and cell phone. Exciting book. Tell us what led you to take this on.
Sure. Well, it was the tragedy, really. I mean, a friend of mine who I've known since the late 1990s, Rupert Thornelow. I first got to know him when he was a young Army intelligence officer, captain. He'd risen to be a lieutenant colonel and in command of his regiment, the Welsh Guards. And he was killed in action in Helmand, southern Afghanistan, on July the 1st, 2009. And I was over here in the States, and I knew he was out there, and I knew that they were in the midst of a bloody fight. But he was the first commanding officer of a battalion, British battalion, killed in action since 1982, the Falklands War. So I thought, oh my goodness, you know, what on earth is going on out there? And that's what led me to go out there and to his bed with the Welsh Guards, and that's what led to Dead Men Risen.
You know, Toby, last night the president, in his State of the Union address, got up and said, well, the war in Afghanistan is over. And what struck me deep in my heart was, if we're not careful, all this gets quickly swept under the rug. And we forget those who lost their lives, who gave their all to help a country and to keep us free and safe. What's your thinking on that?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the problem with American presidents or British prime ministers or politicians in the West declaring an end to wars is that the enemy also has a vote. And in a sense, we've seen this movie before. We saw in Iraq. You know, I spent a lot of time embedded with American troops in places like Fallujah, Ramadi, Mosul. All those places are under the control of ISIS at the moment, a sort of radical Islamist group that heads American and British journalists and aid workers. And we declared declared victory, President Obama declared victory at the end of 2011, that we left with no troops. Now in Afghanistan, similar thing. I mean, southern Afghanistan, Helmand province, where so much British and American blood and treasure was spilt. There are no troops there anymore, and the Taliban is moving into the void. And who knows what other groups might use that sort of ungoverned space. We've got 10,000 NATO troops in Afghanistan, going down to 5,000, a tiny number, almost really a force protection unit in a year's time. So I think it's a very dangerous period, and unfortunately, we can't end wars unilaterally. The enemy does have a say in this, and the Taliban has made it clear that they fight on.
Again, there's so much wrapped up by just saying it's over and swept under the carpet and hope it goes away and we never remember it. Does away with one of the core themes of your book, and that's honor, valor, and patriotism. I think we forget that there were some real patriots fighting over there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what I found when I got out there on the ground with the Welsh Guards, and there were U.S. Marines well fighting alongside them, was that these troops certainly the British troops were very seriously under-equipped, and they were undermanned, so they didn't have the equipment or the manpower that they needed to achieve the mission. And this was the period in 2009 when we were waiting for President Obama to respond to General McChrystal's request for a surge of 40,000 troops. Now, President Obama, at the end of 2009, he announced a surge of 30,000 troops, so he didn't give the general the troops he'd asked for. But sort of crucially, at the same time, he announced that he announced a timetable for withdrawal. So that sent a signal to the Taliban that we weren't in it for the long haul. It sent a signal to ordinary Afghans that you couldn't count on American and British forces. And that, I think, the mission slipped away from the United States and Britain at that point, because it was then operating on a political timetable set in Washington and London, rather than a sort of timetable, a sort of war timetable where the facts on the ground, dictated the military strategy.
The book is titled Dead Men Risen, the epic story of war and heroism in Afghanistan. By the way, it's put out by Rigneri History Books Publishing. You may want to check that out, especially online or at Barnes & Noble. Picture there on the screen. Toby, how would you describe what we hear about? Maybe some would know more about it, but how would you describe the mental anguish that stems from witnessing your fellow soldiers, from the suffering and the pain and the gruesomeness that they experience in war?
Yeah, well, this is something I hadn't fully expected to see and to sort of experience. I mean, one phenomenon I hadn't come across or even really heard about was battle shock. And what that is different from PTSD, although it can be linked to sort of subsequent PTSD. That's when you get troops who, their sort of well of courage is empty almost, that they fought incredibly bravely, but for a period they can't take it anymore. And you had young soldiers going into a state of sort of freezing panic, or vomiting before patrols, or sometimes just ripping off their body armor and sort of walking away, putting themselves into incredible danger. But the saddest aspect of the story, I mean, there's incredible tales of heroism and courage and valor and comradeship. But as well as the people who lost their lives and the people who lost limbs, there were invisible wounds they came back with. And there was one guy in particular, Lance Sergeant Dan Collins, who's one of the many heroes in the book, who fought with incredible bravery. I mean, he was a lion. He never faltered, and he led his men into battle. And he was shot in the back in his body armor, knocked off his feet. He was twice blown up by IEDs, and never, he had the option to go home and didn't. He decided to fight on. And when he came back, I first talked to him when he first came back. He seemed to me to be on top of the world. I was almost sort of jealous of him. This young guy who sort of proved himself in combat. But Dan sank into depths of despair. I mean, he had nightmares about the eyes of the soldier who had died in his arms. He kept on seeing these eyes in his nightmares. He had a comrade, Lance Corporal Day Nelson, who died, blown to pieces, and he helped put the body parts into the helicopter and continue with the battle. And Dan, he hanged himself on New Year's Day in 2012 in a remote quarry, and he recorded a video to his family just saying, I don't like the person I've become. I want a military funeral, but I can't live. And he wasn't the only casualty after coming back. Another hero, a guy who'd fought in the Falklands War and was in his 50s, basically drank himself to death when he got back. So, yes, these invisible wounds stay with troops when they come back. And we've seen it I saw the wonderful movie American Sniper yesterday, which to me is the first movie that really portrays what PTSD is like, and these flashbacks, this hypervigilance. And that was certainly something that the troops that I were with experienced and continue to experience. Wow.
I have a hard time processing that, but it just explains the camaraderie that you soldiers have that we just don't understand. We just can't get our head around it.
Right. And what I wanted to do with this book was portray the reality of war. The triumph, the humor, the sense of comradeship, the sense of pride in doing something you've been trained for and fighting for your country in combat. That's something my grandfather did in the Second World War, my great-grandfather did in the First World War. And so in many ways it's sort of the peak of someone's life, a soldier's life. And certainly Rupert Thorneloe, my friend who was killed, I don't think he would have wanted to be anywhere else or doing anything else other than what he was doing. But there are downsides for individuals and for nations. There is a cost. There's this expression that can get thrown around: freedom isn't free. Well, for these soldiers, it wasn't free. They gave a tremendous amount. They gained a lot from being in the army. Everybody who came back from Afghanistan and Iraq has changed, and in many ways for the better. These are people who've coped with tremendous things, and I think once you've done that, in a way, you can cope with anything. But there are problems, and there's help that's needed, and stigma about mental conditions and PTSD that needs to be reduced. And it's something that, as a society, we need to be aware of, and we need to help veterans deal with.
Toby, again, back to the president's announcement that the war in Afghanistan is over and the withdrawal is there, but we're still leaving, I think, 15,000 troops there. This provokes two questions. One, is our withdrawal a form of surrender? And two, those who remain there, are they in increased danger?
Great question. I think it's currently 10,000 troops, and that'll draw down to 5,000 troops. It's, President Obama used the term yesterday, turning the page. And it's almost like, as a nation, or certainly as a White House, as a president, we just want to put that in the past. The problem is that, as you say, there are troops out there whose lives are still in danger. And certainly, more troops means more protection. And yes, they may not be going out on combat missions, but they're still very, very vulnerable. And I do think, surrender is a very strong word, but it may be, it's certainly arguably appropriate in cases like this where you decide that you don't want to pay the political price, maybe pay the human price. You feel that the population is war weary, and you just decide that's it. We haven't won. We haven't achieved what we wanted to do. We haven't defeated the Taliban, but we're just going to end it, and we're going to kind of say we won. And I think sadly that's the situation we're in at the moment.
You were granted unusual access, to the guardsmen, and I would assume you got more information that you thought you would get.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first got out there, I went round all the outposts with the troops. I walked the same ground as them. I interviewed them sort of on site. And there was one publisher that wanted me to write the book very, very quickly. And I'm glad I didn't do that, because going to visit them once they've gone back and talk to them in their base in Aldershot and in their homes in Wales, and getting to know them over the months and years, really. I got more and more, and people's perspectives changed. And also, I was able to get access to, well, thousands of documents, almost every document that the battalion had produced, and up to the brigade level, and emails from Rupert Thornlow, my friend who'd been killed, a diary of Lieutenant Mark Everson, who's the platoon commander, emails home from Major Sean Birchall, who was the company commander, who was killed. So I was able to put together an incredibly sort of detailed, sort of granular picture of what happened, both from testimony and people's memories, but also the sort of the radio log, the incident log, the incident reports. So I was able to cross-reference it and build up a picture that, you know, is close to being absolutely accurate as I think you could get.
You know, I commend you on doing this, because in some ways it's a eulogy, in some ways it's a reminder, in some ways it is a clear illustration of what that war was all about, what it is about over there. And if we're not careful with this fast, high-paced life that we live with digital, you know, devices and everything else, we won't have any respect of what went on over there. So your book kind of capsulites all that, and I want to commend you for that. What's the essence? What do you want people to get from this, Toby?
I want people to realize that this is what troops go through. And again, American Sniper, you know, it shows that war is hell, that it's horrible, dirty stuff with you have to take incredibly difficult decisions, and you're put in a position that no one would ever want to be put into. So I want people to understand that it's not just, you know, you deploy troops and then you just forget about it, and then someone get killed and they come back. There is a cost, there is a price to pay. And also, you made a good point that this should be a reminder as well as a eulogy. I don't want it to just be something that looks back. I want it to be a reminder to governments and to voters, populations, that if you send somebody to do something, if you send troops out to try and achieve a mission, you need to give, the mission needs to be clear, the strategy needs to be coherent, and you need to give them what they need to succeed. Because sadly, in many aspects of the Afghanistan conflict, and these are highlighted in Dead Men, we didn't give them what they needed.
Wow, so very true. You know, I think we sit home in our living rooms and we watch it on the evening news. And there's one thing about war I think we forget, and you can comment on this, but there are no rules in war. we get into war with some ethical framework, but the enemy has no ethical framework and no rules. It's just we can't get our head around that.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's absolutely right. The thing is, we have rules. We have things called the rules of engagement. Certainly during this period, we had a thing that was called courageous restraint. It was what the British called it, but it was actually a new policy of accepting more risk for yourself, like, you know, soldiers and Marines potentially getting killed to avoid civilian casualties, which is a hell of a thing to ask troops to do. And there was a lot of pushback about that. But certainly, you know, I mean, there were snipers that I spoke to, and the rules of engagement were, if you had a military-age male who was carrying a weapon, you could shoot him. If you saw him with a weapon and then he dropped it and then he walked out the other side of a bush, you couldn't shoot him. And those are the kind of rules we were operating under. But of course, you know, the Taliban doesn't have those rules, and we saw in American Sniper about the use of women and children to carry out attacks, putting troops in the position of having to shoot them and then having to live with that decision for the rest of their lives afterwards. So yes, I mean, it's asymmetric warfare is the sort of term. It's unbalanced. We're Western democracies. We have values that certainly the Taliban and other Islamist groups around the world, they're not the values that they don't share those values.
Wow. Well, Toby, thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your rolling with us on our technical challenges today. Let me encourage you. It's called Dead Man Rising, an epic story of war and heroism in Afghanistan. There's a picture on the screen put out by Rigney History Books. Get a copy of it, and let's, again, have a great appreciation, understanding, and empathy for those, and many of them, who gave their all that we may remain free. Thank you, Toby. Blessings on you, my friend.
Okay.
Let's stay connected.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, back. I just wanted to take a few moments to kind of wrap up our time together today. To again, thank you for your support of the Dove Ministry and some of the things that are going on around here. Your monthly support is vital, and if you've never considered supporting the Dove, would you pray about that? We could certainly use it. It's a really intense operation here now with radio stations and television stations, and getting the gospel out through various means, and having these guests and getting programs, and so there's a lot going on here. And a vast majority of this, in fact, over 86% of this, all happens from listeners and viewers just like you. So if you've never supported the Dove, pray about it. And I say several things about supporting the Dove, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Number one, that God's calling you to do it. And number two, it's a joy for you to do it. And then don't take from your church. Your first obligation is to your church. And if the Lord has you involved in other ministries and outreaches, then you stay faithful to that, because that's important too. But if you feel led to help us here at the Dove, we can certainly use it. We can't be on the air without it. There's a lot going on here. We are now involved in acquiring some new programs, putting together some more guests, and now that we're in our new facility, we're able to do our own expansion of programs, and we're pretty excited about that. Every penny here is used for the kingdom's sake work, and so when you partner with us, you're helping us reach thousands, literally every day, every hour, with encouragement, with good messages, good sermons, good teaching, programs that are provocative. And we've got a great team behind the scenes working hard to make that happen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So pray about becoming a partner with the Dove. And if you feel led, contact us. Just go to thedove.us. You'll see a place to support that. It's there. That's totally secure. You're welcome to come by. You're welcome to call us, whatever the Lord leads you to do, but only do what the Lord leads you to do, okay? And the other thing I just want to remind you of, and I'm pretty passionate about this, that when we look at the life issue in America and the sanctity of life, there's a lot of things out there that we all should be involved in, and you go where the Lord's leading you. But this particular issue impacts all of us. Are we fighting for those who can't fight for themselves? The life of the unborn. I truly believe if we can stop abortions in this state and in this country, that our prayers will be heard in heaven, and God will begin to engage in a fresh new way in healing our land. And so tomorrow night is tomorrow night there's a special gathering sponsored by Jackson County Right to Life, and they've changed the venue. They're moving it indoors, and they're moving it to the evening. We'll be using the facility of the First Baptist Church there on Craig Lake Avenue at 7 o'clock. Come on, it'll be warm, and the program is going to be very impacting. And it'll be indoors, and it'll be in the evening at 7 o'clock. We'd love to see you there. And some folks will be speaking and sharing and testimonies. But it's a time for us to come together and ask God to give us wisdom to come against this atrocity in our land. It has to stop. And 48 million babies in the last 42 years have never got a chance to live because of abortion. There are alternatives. And so would you come tomorrow night? Be there at 7 o'clock? We'd love to see you. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.